Fond memories keep coming back as the old days I recall. 50 years ago when I was a kid and shipping cattle in the fall. Oh, we still ship cattle in the fall, but it's different now somehow. It's not quite the same. The mystique is gone. Maybe it's just 'cause I'm older now. Back then we'd trail to the railroad pens. It was a couple of days' drive to the corrals. Now big trucks pick 'em up right at the ranch. Most ranches now have their own scales. The buyer would set the shipping date. He'd probably bought several neighbors' yearlings too, and he'd order up enough railroad cars, and the railroad would schedule the section crew. We'd handle them quietly for 2 days coming to the pens so as not to chouse off the weight that had been put on during the long summer months up till a late October shipping date. We'd arrive at the pens the evening before, and a half dozen other small outfits were there, loose herding their cattle and letting them graze. Putting a good fill on them was their care. The contract called for the traditional shrink to stand in a dry corral all night, so we took our turns at corralling our herds and shaping the cattle up right. Them railroad corrals was plenty well built, 8-foot fences of 2x8 planks, big heavy gates with heavy hardware. They'd hold a wild cow no matter how rank. By dark we'd have the bunches all in and the sorting and cutting all through, and the inspector had finished checking the brands, and he might have even questioned a few. Seemed we'd always have to rope one or two and throw 'em down on their side and cut the long hair with the clippers. Yep, the brand, it's there all right. Next morning, just before daylight, the buyer drives up in his big car, and we'd spend a few minutes swapping a yarn or two, standing around a big warming fire. Them was always cold, frosty mornings. Sometimes there was a light skift of snow, or maybe just a cold, sleety rain, or a stiff breeze from the north would blow. Soon as we could see, he'd look at the bunches and exercise his right to a cut. Some would use this chance to chouse 'em a bit, just to knock off a little more weight. After the cut, we'd start weighing. We'd weigh up in the same order we'd penned. The buyer was running the scales and the owner was writing them down. We'd count 'em on the scale and then count 'em off, just to be sure that our count was all right. 20 head at a time was about the limit. We didn't want to jam 'em too tight. As each owner got weighed, he'd start loading up the long alley and wide loading chute, with a couple of men horseback in the alley and along with 2 or 3 others on foot. Mid-morning, the job was all finished. The cattle was all on the cars and sitting there on the siding, the last of the old Bar J bars. The weights had all been tallied, and the buyer had left us his check. It would almost pay off the banker, even better than we expected, by heck. Now we're just waiting for the old Apache to come and take 'em away, and we're feeling great that the steers weighed so good. Another successful shipping day. So I'm sitting here all nostalgic, remembering the old days long past, when we used to ship on the railroad. I think we just get old too darn fast.